Hi, how are you?
Good morning or good afternoon. I don't know what time it is where you are.
I'm currently in Madagascar. I'm in East Africa, so it's about 5:30 p.m.
PM, and here it's 9:30 a.m. Well, Taye, how are you? I have half an hour, um,
Okay, okay.
and I'd be happy to spend that with you.
I'm doing good. I want to thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate you taking out the time to talk about some of the amazing work that you have done. For the viewers who may not recognize you, could you let them know who you are, where you from, and what do you do?
So my name is Elizabeth Plater Zyberk. Um, some people know me as Liz. I am an architect and an urban designer. I'm a partner in a firm I founded called DPZ Co-Design in Miami, but we work all over the world. And I am a professor at the University of Miami School of Architecture.
Wow, okay, that's really cool. And I would like to know, when did you develop this passion for, architecture and urban design?
Well, as an older woman in the field, when there were not many women architects when I was a young person, I was lucky enough to have a father who was an architect. And I could see at that time the drawings were done in pencil. And I could see him making these beautiful drawings. And that was the beginning.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Now I would like to ask you about that. Since you started, which you have a family history, and fast forward into 2024, the technological changes that have taken place. Has it been an easy transition for you?
Well, the good news is it's been gradual, quick but gradual. And so it's actually been very interesting change to watch. But, in the field of if you're getting things or trying to get things built, there's still a lot of the same old technology in there. Um, the materials that are used for building, yes, there are innovations, but uh, we're beginning to find that maybe some of those innovations are not so good. But much of it's done by hand. If it's done by machine, there are humans who are guiding those machines. And so uh, architecture and the building industry may be one of the um, places that's advancing most slowly in terms of what can be produced because it's so physical. It's made of stuff.
Okay, okay. I don't know. That sounds like that's good to hear because I interview a lot of people, whether it's music or it's film or even in medicine. You hear about all these changes that are taking place, in terms of AI and technology. And some of them
Yeah.
are good, but then some people are kind of like, worried a little bit. And now I wanted to ask you about this as well. You mentioned being a woman in architecture. Have you seen a significant change? Are there more women in your classes now, or is it steady? Is it about the same?
Yes, you still, there's a good percentage, and often more than half of the students might be women. And there's also um, the other minorities in the U.S. are much better represented in the universities than they and in the professions than they have been. But if you look at the big firms around the world, you'll see that men still dominate the leadership in the profession, and we still have um, many improvements in that score to make. That they talk about the glass ceiling in many, and it's more evident, I think, in architecture than maybe even in medicine or law.
Wow, I appreciate you sharing that insight. Definitely a glass ceiling. Now, I can ask you this: what classes do you actually teach, and are you in a traditional classroom, or do you kind of go outside of that?
No, I teach a design studio in which you're really hands-on with the students over their drawings and in front of their computers. Um, I always ask them to draw by hand, which some people are afraid of. but there's a special eye-hand-brain connection that's different, I think, than pushing a mouse around. And I want them to at least have that, the experience of that process, to understand how it works. And now I'm preparing a course for the spring semester called Adaptation to Climate Change. And this does talk about, it does cover briefly what we should be doing to be decreasing the rate of climate change, but it mostly focuses on what do we need to be doing right away to be adapting to the ever more severe impacts. I don't know what you have felt in your country, but we've been having some unusual severe weather events and impacts in kind of various places. We always hear the word unprecedented in various parts of the U.S.
Yeah, definitely. Has been some significant global changes in the weather. I'm from America. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, so I'm just in vacation right now. I'm a world traveler, so I just like to go different places and hang out for a while.
Uh-huh.
Now, let me see. Okay, now I can ask you this: when you use terms like urban designer, urban planning, architecture. Now architecture, I guess most people would consider like you building like buildings. Is it more to it than that, or is that pretty much?
Well, the to get to just to fully document a building for construction, so it can get permits. So you understand how much it costs, so a contractor can start building it, so the investors are willing to put money into it, is a very kind of deep endeavor. There's a lot of work and detail that goes into that effort. Urban design is more of a generalist's approach in which you're taking into account architecture, engineering, sociology, public finance, politics, all sorts of things that you're trying to coordinate, not unlike the coordination involved in a building, but across a larger geography, and buildings often think about their internal spaces and how they look on the outside. But in urban design, you're focused a lot on the public spaces. What are the shared spaces between buildings? It's usually the streets and squares of cities, very often publicly owned, or at least in some shared ownership. And those are very important for, they can be the glue for society, for especially a diverse society. That's where people mix. That's where the market, takes place. That's where people see each other where they might not in other conditions. So it's very important in terms of community and harmony among people to make those places safe, comfortable, and interesting.
Yeah, definitely, especially safe, because a lot of people take it for granted. We see these beautiful buildings, or even our schools and houses where we live. It's a lot of work and effort to, not only just to build them, but like you say, to make sure that they're safe so we can sleep and work and learn, without having to worry about, getting injured.
Yeah, there's some interesting, over the years, there's interesting research about, what enables people to help each other in public. How many families or households can look out for each other? Half a dozen, maybe, the fingers on your hands, might make the best neighborhood. Why are high rises difficult places to live? Because you don't see people the way you might on a street or a stairwell of a small building. You don't really know your neighbors. You need a good management. That's where public housing in the US went awry, is the high rises were basically, without a lot of funding, could not be well managed. So many of them have been taken down, and we're going back to building low rise housing and trying to make neighborhoods rather than just projects.
Yeah, that's a very important point. I'm glad you addressed that. Now, I don't know if it's connected, but in my neighborhood in Cleveland, we have like a lot of like abandoned homes, and they'll tear them down and they'll turn into like these vacant lots, and people throw trash in them and weapons. They're kind of dangerous. So I've been buying the different lots. So in 2022, I started an urban garden. Clean the lot out, cut the grass, like you say, bringing that community feel back, bringing the kids
Yeah.
out, bringing the elders out, show them how to be beekeepers, how to grow fruits and vegetables, how to feed and care for the chickens and stuff like that. I think that's very helpful, not only physically and nutritionally, but psychologically as well too.
Yeah, it's important. Our first a so-called inner city project was in Cleveland. It was in a neighborhood called Cleveland Central. And it was like you described, it was largely empty, but it had, with empty lots, but it had some older homes that people had never left. Porches. There's a kind of side porch house that is historically of Cleveland. And we did a little research, and the police showed us the one place in town which had 6 houses around a little courtyard. They said, we never get called out here because they all take care of each other. They're all looking out for this space together. So we modeled that neighborhood we tried to revalue the old houses by designing the new ones to look like the old ones, even though they were modern inside, and to make the community spaces small greens with 6 or 8 houses around them, so that you could develop that smaller increment of community where people can look out for each other. And it's still there. That was way back. That was like 20 or 30 years ago.
Wow, that's really interesting because Central is a historic neighborhood. When during the Great Migration, that's where all the African Americans moved to. They had their businesses and stuff. So my grandparents, my great grandparents, my father, my mother, they went to high school there. That's where my family started at for the most part.
And there was a little church, so we made that the kind of centerpiece of the neighborhood that we were asked to work on.
Oh wow, I really appreciate you sharing that. Now I can ask you about this, the Built Environment, Behavior and Health and Research Group. Is that connected to what you just explained, or is it something a little different?
Well, the principles are certainly connected. That group started in the public health department, and I have I forget what they call it, a joint appointment or anyway, a couple of us in the School of Architecture work with the faculty in the School of Medicine's public health department. And it was Dr. Shaposnik who came to us, and he said, many years ago, and he said, you all talk about buildings and community, buildings and neighborhoods, the way we talk about individuals and communities. And it was about when Hillary Clinton said it takes a village to raise a child. That was the kind of understanding that individuals are embedded in society, in community, and they both need to be healthy to support each other. And so there's been a lot of research. My colleague Joanna Lombard has done a lot of research with Dr. Shaposnik's team that I look in on from time to time, but they're the main people who've published articles about wellness and community design. Oh, that's my dog.
Oh, okay. No, it's okay. Now you've been kind of covering the different areas, and I wanted to ask you about the Congress for New Urbanism.
I need to disappear for 1 minute. I'll be right back.
Okay, I'll edit it.
Thank you for that interruption. So the Congress for the New Urbanism is, and we were in Cincinnati at our annual meeting last year. This year we'll be in Providence. Is a group of several thousand people, members who share their knowledge, experiences, questions, it's a big network of learning and doing in urban design and in community design, community building. We work with the private sector, with developers. We work with cities. We are interdisciplinary. We're architects, landscape architects, engineers, elected people, civic activists, historians, you name it. Anyone who feels they can make a contribution in some way to building community is welcomed in the CNU, as we call it, the Congress for the New Urbanism. I was one of the co-founders back in 1993. And you can look up cnu.org and see the charter that was written several years into the, as the organization was growing, and it sets out the principles for making healthy and hopefully beloved communities at 3 scales: region, the larger scale of a region, which might be even larger than a city, the neighborhood, which is the kind of the increment of community, the 5-minute walk where you might have various mixed uses and mixed housing, and street block and building, which is the details that make it work, that those public spaces and how the private building contributes or makes those public spaces. So, and I invite all of your listeners, viewers, to look in on cnu.org.
That sounds great. I'm sure they definitely will. I'm gonna have to check that out as well. Okay, now you're an author. I wanted to talk to you about, or I asked you about your books. Suburban Nation. What was the inspiration for that book, and what exactly is it about?
Well, in the last century, it already seems like a long time ago, doesn't it? We were beginning to understand that suburban growth and city and the losses in cities were a related phenomenon, and that there needed to be a new approach to human settlements in the US, but that has spread to other parts of the world too, this kind of sprawling urbanism that's dependent on the vehicle to get around. And we started looking at the kind of pre-oil, pre-unrenewable resource history and how people lived then. And also a lot of, in the 20s, in the beginning of the 20th century, there was a lot of good urban design in which cars were already included, but there was still an emphasis on walking and community, a sense of community, a sense of place. So that's how we got started, was thinking about, how could we make city building better? And Suburban Nation, which has sold over 100,000 books, which is really a lot for something written by architects, was Jeff Speck, Andres Duane, and I bringing some of our public lectures to print in order to explain that phenomenon of cities decanting, suburbs growing, and how that was unsustainable. And it became a very important kind of background for, okay, that's the problem, now what do we do? And that's what we do in our urban design practice at the university and in the Congress.
So I want to thank you again for stopping by. I truly appreciate you taking out the time, and I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I definitely look forward to the work that you have coming in the future.
Yeah, and you might look in on and see those. They must be about 20 years old now, the houses in Cleveland Central that we helped make happen.
Yeah, I know what area you're talking about.
Yeah. All right. Taye, it's been a pleasure to be with you.
All right, and see you.
Thank you for including me.
You're welcome.